Buck, I think that's over. I think that's done, but
What do you mean?
I think his career is finished.
That bar from 50 Cent hit deep because not long after, Young Buck's whole world flipped. Bankruptcy, heavy IRS troubles, and even time behind bars for probation issues. His rise fell apart in slow motion, and the truth behind that downfall is way darker than fans ever imagined. From the block to the spotlight, it all started with one wild journey. Buck's come-up story is no fairy tale, it's raw, real, and sets the stage for everything that came later. Growing up in Nashville, Tennessee, young David Brown wasn't handed an easy ride at all. He bounced from Sea Fright in North Nashville to the J.C. Napier projects in the South, and then over to the South 7 projects, always on the move, always adapting. By the time he was just 8, he already knew Nashville like the back of his hand. East to west, top to bottom, he was navigating different neighborhoods, soaking in every bit of that street energy that would later shape his entire sound. To help his family and make a few bucks, Young Buck hustled the honest way, pumping gas for tips, mowing lawns, washing cars, doing whatever it took to stack a little cash. Music became more than just a dream. It was his escape, his therapy, his drive. He started freestyling with his closest crew, and anyone bold enough to step up.
But what did happen was Buck and Lil Jimmy ended up meeting everybody at Cash Money Records. And the first thing that Birdman told Buck was to spit a freestyle for him, and he put him up against Lil Wayne at that time, and they went back and forth. And that ended up impressing Birdman.
Slowly but surely, he built a name in Nashville's underground hip-hop scene, and the streets started to whisper, "Yo, this dude Buck is the real deal." Now this is where things get real interesting. The part that shows just how sharp Buck's hustle was and how badly he wanted to make it big. Buck and his homie came across a CD from BG, Chopper City, and on the back cover, they spotted a phone number for Cash Money Records. These two young dreamers, barely knowing what they were getting into, actually dialed that number with a bold plan. They told Cash Money they wanted to book them for a show in Nashville for about $5,000. Wild, right? And somehow, against all odds, they actually managed to set it up. The show never ended up happening, but what did go down flipped Buck's full life upside down, for the better. Birdman was so impressed by their guts that he flew Buck down to New Orleans to talk business and maybe even sign with Cash Money Records. Imagine that. A kid from Nashville suddenly standing face to face with one of the biggest names in the game. At just 14 years old, Buck made one of the biggest moves of his life. He dropped out of school to chase his dream full time.
Juvie happened to pull up at the office, and when he pulled up, he was kind of shocked to see me there. I'm like, I've been here for a whole week. And he was like, man, you want to get up out of here for a minute? You know what I'm saying? And I took that ride with Juvie, and that's where my career started with Juvenile.
Now, whether that was the right call or not, one thing's for sure, it proved just how locked in he was. Music wasn't some side gig or hobby to him. It was his lifeline, his only shot to make it out and rewrite his story. The only real proof Buck has from his whole Cash Money era is his quick cameo in the Big Timers' Big Ballin' music video. But by 1999, Buck was completely over it. Tired of sitting on the sidelines while everyone else around him was leveling up. He finally made the tough call to walk away from Cash Money and head back home to Nashville to chase success on his own terms. But those years weren't a total loss, not even close. During that time, Buck soaked up priceless game about how the music business really worked. He built key connections with big names like DJ Paul from 3 6 Mafia and Juvenile, links that would end up being major for him later. Back in Nashville, Buck reconnected with his local crew and went all in on his grind. No label, no big investors, just pure determination. On August 22nd, 2000, he dropped Thuggin' Till the End with his partner D-Tay, and something crazy happened. The project, completely independent, started making noise for real. It hit number 34 in the US R&B charts and number 17 on the US Independent chart. That's massive for a local artist pushing music out the trunk without any major backing. Buck managed to sell around 10,000 copies, and while that might not sound like superstar numbers, for an indie artist doing it all himself,
And out of my ordeal back in the streets, I ended up getting shot in a home invasion and a robbery. One in the arm and one in the upper thigh area. It was enough for me to wake up and really realize that, yo, if this shit keep going on like this, I'm either to get killed or I'm gonna go to jail. And I really realized that because I was getting down for real. Really started to devote more of my time to the music then, the studio, period.
It was a huge win. Then came the wake-up call that flipped Buck's whole mindset. The moment that forced him to decide what lane he really wanted to ride in. After surviving a violent home invasion where he was seriously hurt, Buck made him a promise that would change everything. No more living that risky lifestyle, no more distractions, just pure focus on music from that point forward. And just when he needed a sign that he was on the right path, it showed up through an old Cash Money connection. DJ Paul from 3-6 Mafia, who always respected Buck's raw talent and lyrical skills, heard what had happened and reached out. He had Project Pop pull up to Nashville, scoop Buck, and bring him down to Memphis to get in the studio and lay down some tracks. Those sessions turned into something major. Buck landed his first big album placement on 3-6 Mafia's legendary project, When the Smoke Clears, 66-61. That was the break Buck had been grinding for. The kind of spotlight that could open real doors. Let's not skip ahead too fast, because how Buck actually linked up with G-Unit is a wild story all on its own. When things started getting real for him, out of nowhere, Birdman, his old connection from Cash Money, hit him up again with a new opportunity.
A week after the deal fizzled out with UTP, 50 Cent ended up calling Young Buck and said, hey, we want that Bloodhound track. We'll pay you $20,000 for it. Let us put it on the album. And the track is getting mixed by Eminem and Dr. Dre.
But this time, things were completely different from how they'd been back in the late 90s. By now, Cash Money was on another level. Bigger offices, fancy cars everywhere, and success shining from every corner. Birdman told Buck he wanted him to join a brand new group he was forming called Headbusters. So Buck hopped on a plane back to New Orleans, thinking this could finally be the move that changed everything. But once again, history started to repeat itself, and not in a good way. After a week of just sitting around, waiting for something to actually happen, there was still no official deal, no paper signed, and no real progress being made. Buck started losing patience. He wasn't that young, wide-eyed kid anymore. He was a grown man now, with bills, family, and a name he was building back home in Nashville. He didn't have time to be stuck in limbo again. Then, out of nowhere, fate stepped in. Juvenile pulled up at the Cash Money offices and was stunned to see Buck just waiting around. He looked at him like, what are you doing here, bro? At that moment, everything shifted.
Buck officially joined Juvenile's UTP record label, but what he did next showed just how sharp and strategic he really was. When Juvenile handed him the contract, Buck didn't just rush to sign it. Instead, he took it home, slid it under his bed, and never actually put pen to paper. That move right there shows serious street smarts. He knew how unpredictable the music game could be. During that period, he dropped 2 projects, Born to Be a Thug on October 10th, 2002.
Buck ended up coming on with them and hopefully having his situation figured out as well. But as years went on, Buck said he spent 3 to 4 years with Cash Money and none of his music ever got released. He got essentially put on the back burner while the other artists on Cash Money like Lil Wayne, Juvenile, BG, so on and so forth, ended up blowing up.
In a compilation with the UTP players that dropped just days earlier on October 8th, 2002. But here's the twist. Even though he was putting in work, Buck was never officially signed on paper. Why? Because he was paying close attention to what was happening around him. He'd already learned from his Cash Money experience, and he noticed Juvenile was dealing with his own issues with the label. Internal drama, business problems, all of it. Things were shaky, and Buck wasn't about to lock himself into another unstable situation. At one point, Juvenile even told Buck straight up that if a better opportunity came his way, he should take it, and that advice would soon change everything. While on tour with UTP, their bus made a stop in New York City, and in 2002, nobody in the city had more buzz than 50 Cent. The streets were talking about him non-stop. He was the hottest name in hip-hop, no question. Their tour bus driver happened to have a plug to 50's former manager, Shy Money XL, and Buck kept asking him to make the connection. He wanted to bring 50 on the bus to see if they could cook up something together, and guess what? While Juvenile and 50 Cent were in the back of the tour bus laying down tracks, Buck pulled the slick, genius move that would change his whole career. He started playing some of his own solo songs for Lloyd Banks and Tony Yayo, who were also chilling on the bus. One beat in particular grabbed Banks' attention. He couldn't ignore how fire it was. So Banks grabbed that track and brought it to the back of the bus where 50 was recording. 50 heard it, felt the vibe instantly, and ended up jumping on it. That song would later become Bloodhound on the legendary Get Rich or Die Trying album. That joint was pure heat and became a key moment that introduced the world to Young Buck's name in a big way. Now technically, it wasn't the first time all four of them had been on a track together. That title goes to A Little Bit of Everything from the 50 Cent is the Future mixtape. But Bloodhound was the one that really broke through and showed fans what Buck could bring to the table. At that time, 50 already saw Buck's potential, but he couldn't lock him into a deal yet. He didn't even have his own major deal secured. Still, 50 didn't forget him. When UTP started falling apart, just like Buck had predicted, fate came knocking again. 50 reached out and told Buck he wanted to fly him out to LA to link up with Eminem and Dre, two of the biggest names in the entire game. There, Buck would officially sign with G-Unit Records, marking the start of a whole new chapter. It was like a dream come true, especially for someone who had already survived so many setbacks and near misses. Buck's first big placement under G-Unit was Bloodhound, but 50 had a master plan to build him up the right way. Instead of dropping Buck's solo project right away, 50 decided the world needed to meet the whole squad first. Beg for Mercy exploded onto the scene, peaking at number 2 on the Billboard 200 and moving an insane 377,000 copies in its first week. To this day, it's sold over 2.7 million copies in the US alone and is close to diamond status worldwide. Young Buck had officially arrived, front and center on one of the biggest rap stages ever. The whole block, the whole city, the whole culture was watching. Keeping with the G-Unit formula that had already proven unstoppable, Buck followed up with a street-certified mixtape titled Welcome to the Hood on May 31st, 2004, hosted by DJ Woo Kid. The tape lit the streets on fire, building major hype for what was coming next, Buck's solo debut. Then came the single that set it all off, Let Me In featuring 50 Cent. It dropped and instantly made noise, peaking at number 34 on the Billboard Hot 100. That record had everyone talking. Buck was no longer just a feature or a crew member, he was a star in his own right. But the real turning point came on August 24th, 2004, when Buck dropped his debut album, Straight Outta Cashville. The results were massive. The album debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200, selling 361,000 copies in its first week, and later went platinum. That's huge for any artist, but for Buck, it was history in the making. The second single, Shorty Wanna Ride, became Buck's biggest solo hit, peaking at number 17 on the Billboard Hot 100. But this was more than just about sales or radio spins. Buck shattered what people called the Nashville curse. For decades, no artist outside the country music scene had broken through from the city like that. People in Nashville used to talk about a so-called Nashville curse, the idea that no artist outside the country scene could ever break through big. But Buck smashed that wall in pieces, opening the door wide open for a new generation of Southern hip-hop artists to shine. He didn't just win for himself, he changed the entire city's reputation. Then came November 15th, the night of the Vibe Awards, where things took a shocking turn that would follow Buck for years. The room was packed with heavyweights, Dre, Eminem, 50 Cent, the whole G-Unit squad, and Suge Knight all in one place. In the middle of that high-energy chaos, an altercation broke out involving a man named Jimmy Johnson, who reportedly tried to grab Dre. In the middle of the madness, Young Buck allegedly stepped in and struck back to defend his camp. Afterwards, Buck left the scene and later turned himself in a few days later, showing he was ready to face the situation head-on. It took about 1.5 years before everything got settled. He ended up receiving 3 years of probation and was required to complete community service hours. The incident didn't destroy his career, but it was a warning sign, a moment that showed how his loyalty and instinct to protect his people could sometimes pull him into dangerous territory.
But Buck didn't let that slow him down, not for a second. In 2005, he kept pushing, staying focused on the grind. He jumped on 3 6 Mafia's smash hit Stay Fly, which blew up to number 13 on the Billboard Hot 100 and went double platinum. That feature kept his name hot in the streets and on the charts. At the same time, Buck dropped an independent project to shine a spotlight on new artists from his G-Unit South movement, a branch of G-Unit that 50 Cent had trusted him to run. He wasn't just an artist anymore. He was becoming a boss, building his own foundation inside one of the biggest labels in hip-hop. Buck dropped Case Dismissed, the introduction to G-Unit South with DJ Drama, marking a major moment in his career. The project wasn't just about music. It was a victory lap celebrating the end of his long legal battle from the Viber Wars incident. And at the same time, it introduced the new talent he was bringing up under the G-Unit South banner. Buck was finally stepping into his role as both an artist and a leader, building something real for the South. But right around the time Buck was crafting his highly anticipated second album, Buck the World, serious tension started brewing behind the scenes. 50 Cent and their shared manager, Sean Money XL, started falling out, and the whole G-Unit family got pulled into the middle of it. 50 called a meeting with the crew, Buck, Lloyd Banks, and Tony Yayo, and told them straight up that he was cutting ties with Sean Money. He wanted everyone to find new management and move on without him. That's when things got complicated. Buck's loyalty, one of his strongest qualities, ended up becoming a problem in 50's eyes. Buck had grown incredibly close to Sean Money XL. So close, in fact, that he was the best man at Shy's wedding. Their bond ran deeper than just business. So when 50 told everyone to drop Shy, Banks and Yayo followed orders, but Buck couldn't do it. To Buck, Shy wasn't just a manager, he was family. He felt like it wasn't right to turn his back on someone who'd been there from day one, especially when he didn't have a personal issue with him. He believed 50 and Shy would eventually squash whatever was going on, so he stayed neutral, thinking loyalty to both sides was the respectful move. But that decision didn't sit well with 50 at all. He took it as disloyalty, as if Buck had chosen a side against him. From that point on, the tension was impossible to miss. 50, Banks, and Yayo started showing up together at events, interviews, and performances, but Buck and Shy were noticeably left out, having to push Buck the World on their own, without the full G-Unit machine backing them up. That divide hit hard. When Buck the World dropped on March 27, 2007, it still did solid numbers, debuting with 98,000 copies sold in the first week and going gold. But without the full promotional power of G-Unit behind it, it didn't reach the same heights as Buck's debut. For Buck, it wasn't just about sales. It was the beginning of a rift that would shake the foundation of one of hip-hop's strongest crews. Buck the World debuted strong, hitting number 3 on the Billboard 200 with 140,000 copies sold in his first week, a solid showing by any standards. But compared to his debut, the singles I Know You Want Me and Get Buck didn't perform as well as expected, and behind the scenes, things were heating up fast. Around that time, 50 Cent started accusing Buck of getting too friendly with his rivals. Names like The Game, Jadakiss, Fat Ho, and Jim Jones. But Buck later made it clear that it wasn't like that at all. According to him, he wasn't buddying up with anyone. He was actually passing info back to 50, keeping him updated on what those other camps were saying. Still, 50 saw even that contact as disloyalty, and that's where the tension really started to grow. Then came the money drama. 50 claimed Buck was burning through cash way too fast, ignoring advice about handling his finances and letting his taxes pile up. 50 even said he had stepped in twice to help cover Buck's tax issues, but by the third time, he was done helping. By 2008, Buck found out he owed around $300,000 to the IRS, a massive financial hit that added even more pressure to an already messy situation. And just when things couldn't seem to get any worse, they did. Early 2008 started rough. In January, Buck performed at a show with Lil Wayne and Birdman, where both of them publicly encouraged them to leave G-Unit and join Young Money Cash Money. The wild Buck appeared to agree with them on stage. Cameras caught it all. And when 50 saw the footage, he was furious. By February 2008, G-Unit dropped a new mixtape called Return of the Body Snatchers Volume 1, but Buck was completely left off the project. Fans were confused because just a few months earlier, he and 50 had dropped a track together called Feel Good. Something clearly had gone very wrong behind the scenes. The fall that young Buck took in 2008 is something he's still recovering from to this day. A moment that flipped his career upside down and pushed him towards bankruptcy and a long and painful road back. In March 2008, Buck and 50 had a private phone call that nobody knew about at the time, except 50 secretly recorded the whole thing. After that conversation, it looked like things might finally be cooling off between them. Buck even hopped on a few tracks for the G-Unit mixtape Elephant in the Sand that same month, And for a quick second, it seemed like the two were rebuilding their bond and started to think maybe, just maybe, they'd work everything out. But that peace didn't last long, not even close. On March 20th, 2008, an interview with Yo Rap's magazine dropped where Buck was quoted as saying, "I'm still waiting on a royalty check, period. I've never seen a royalty check since I signed with G-Unit. So yeah, I'll tell you one thing, that show money is that good. I've never in my career cashed a royalty check." The problem was, that interview wasn't even recent. It had been recorded months earlier, but the outlet decided to release it right as Buck and 50 was supposedly fixing things, and the timing couldn't have been worse. It made it look like Buck was calling out 50 all over again, right after they made peace. Fans in the industry saw it as drama reigniting, and behind the scenes, that single interview set off an explosion.
Shy Money XL immediately jumped in to try and calm the storm. The very next day, he denied the rumors and claimed Buck had earned well over $10 million under 50's guidance. But by then, the damage was already done. On April 7th, 2008, 50 Cent called into Hot 97 live on the air and officially announced that Young Buck was no longer part of G-Unit as a group, though he would still remain signed to G-Unit Records as a solo artist. That phone call marked the end of an era, the public breaking point between two artists who had once been like brothers. The very next week, the entire G-Unit crew hit Hot 97, and that's when 50 Cent aired out even more details, including claims that Buck was struggling with substance issues. It was a tough moment for Buck, who stayed silent for a few weeks, probably just trying to process everything that had gone down so suddenly. Then on May 12, 2008, Buck came back swinging with a response track titled My Interview. On it, he spoke directly about being kicked out of G-Unit and addressed the accusations head-on. It was raw, emotional, and honest. Buck was trying to tell his side of the story. For a short while after that, things calmed down, until June rolled around. That's when Buck made the move that would completely seal his fate. On June 15, 2008, during a live show, Young Buck stood in front of the crowd and publicly dissed G-Unit. That was the breaking point, the moment of no return. Just 2 days later, on June 17th, 50 Cent hit back hard. He dropped the full recording of that private phone call between him and Buck, the one from earlier in the year, where Buck could be heard breaking down emotionally, asking for help and forgiveness. It was a brutal moment that played out publicly for the entire world to hear, and it left Buck's image in pieces. But Buck didn't stay quiet this time. The very next day, on June 18th, he fired back with a diss track called The Tape Conversation, where he flipped the narrative and went straight at 50. To make things even crazier, the Game jumped on a remix, backing Buck up, and for a second, it looked like a full-blown alliance between former G-Unit members was forming. There was even talk of a joint mixtape between Buck and Game called Worth More Than 50 Cent, rumored to drop that July, but it never saw the light of day. When G-Unit released their second group album, Terminate on Sight, on July 1st, 2008, Buck was barely on it, featured on just 4 songs, more like a guest than a member. It was clear the door had completely closed. Since Buck was still technically signed to G-Unit Records, 50 Cent had the power to block any official releases. And that meant Buck had to find another way to keep his voice alive. So starting in 2009, he switched up his grind and began flooding the streets with mixtapes instead, taking full control of his hustle. What's wild is that for a lot of real fans, especially those who studied Buck's journey closely, 2009 is often remembered as the period when his music hit its most real and hungry phase ever. You could hear everything he was going through right in his delivery. The pain, the frustration, the determination, and that deep fire to prove he still had it. It wasn't polished label rap. It was pure survival mode, and fans could feel every word. During that run, Buck dropped several mixtapes, including Back for the Streets on April 11, 2009, and the fan favorite Back on My Buck on May 26, 2009. Tracks like I Want It All and I Got It featuring Young Jeezy showed Buck at his sharpest, focused, fearless, and motivated to claw his way back to the top no matter what. But while he was keeping his momentum alive musically, his personal and legal problems were starting to pile up fast, and it hit hard. On August 3, 2010, the IRS raided Buck's home over $300,000 in unpaid taxes, seizing assets and property in the process. To make things worse, during that raid, authorities discovered a firearm in the house. Because of his past legal issues tied to the 2004 Vibe Awards incident, that single find led to new federal charges. even though Buck insisted that the gun belonged to his licensed tour manager, not him. It was another devastating blow in a string of non-stop setbacks. On August 20th, 2010, young Buck officially filed for Chapter 13 bankruptcy. But here's the twist that a lot of people miss. This wasn't just about money or survival. Through that bankruptcy filing, Buck was actually able to secure his release from his G-Unit Records contract. It was a desperate move, sure, but it was also a strategic one, a way to finally free himself from the deal that had kept him trapped for years. Not long after, Buck dropped his independent album, The Rehab, on September 10, 2010, debuting at number 55 on the Billboard 200 and selling over 6,400 copies in his first week. Those weren't blockbuster numbers, but for a fully independent release, it showed that Buck's name still carried weight and that he could stand on his own. Still, the legal issues didn't stop. They just kept stacking up. In March 2011, G-Unit Records hit Buck with a $10 million lawsuit, a heavy blow at a time when he was already trying to rebuild from the ground up. Things looked rough, but in late 2011, there was a strange moment of public interaction that got people talking. 50 Cent randomly tweeted, "For some reason, I think young Buck is mad at me. Who cares? I'm giving my $250,000 back, sucker." The tone was petty and dismissive, but it showed that 50 still had Buck on his mind, and the internet went crazy over it. Then came a terrifying moment that nearly cost Buck his life. On March 4th, 2012, Buck survived a drive-by shooting outside a club in South Nashville. Shots were fired at his vehicle, and his partner was hit in the shoulder, but thankfully survived. The attack shook Buck deeply, adding even more chaos to an already stormy chapter in his life.
Just a few months later, on July 13, 2012, things took another dark turn. Buck was officially sentenced to 18 months in prison on the firearm charge connected to the 2010 IRS raid. As if that wasn't enough, the following month, the IRS held a public auction of his personal belongings, jewelry, studio gear, and even furniture. The sale only brought in $53,000, but the real sting came from the public humiliation of watching his possessions sold off piece by piece. In August 2012, Buck turned himself in to begin serving his 18-month sentence. It was the lowest point of his career, from platinum records and hit singles to losing everything he'd worked for. But even then, Buck wasn't done. By 2014, things were shifting again. 50 Cent had started patching things up with Tony Yayo and Lloyd Banks, slowly rebuilding bridges that had been broken for years. And surprisingly, he had also started thinking about young Buck. The moment that nobody thought would ever happen finally went down on June 1st, 2014 at Hot 97 Summer Jam. 50 brought out all three original G-Unit members on stage, and the crowd went absolutely wild. It was official. The G-Unit reunion was real. Not long after, the group dropped two brand new projects, The Beauty of Independence on August 25th, 2014, and The Beast is G-Unit on March 3rd, 2015. Both EPs had serious heat, gritty bars, tight production, and that old school G-Unit chemistry fans had missed for years. For a moment, it felt like the family was finally back together again. Meanwhile, Buck was back in his bag, hungry, focused, and working non-stop. He launched his ambitious 10 series of mixtapes, dropping projects like 10 Bullets, 10 Bricks, 10 Pints, 10 Bodies, and more between 2015 and 2018. It was a powerful comeback run that reminded everyone just how relentless his grind was. But then, once again, trouble found him. On July 15, 2016, Buck was arrested following an argument involving his ex-girlfriend and ended up being sentenced to 7 months behind bars. Another setback, another storm, but Buck kept pushing forward. By 2018, things started looking promising again. He released the single Can't Lose on March 30th, 2018, and it was straight flames. The kind of track that showed he still had that raw energy and storytelling power that made fans love him in the first place. Soon after, Buck announced that his upcoming third studio album will be executive produced by both 50 Cent and Dr. Dre, a dream combo to have fans hyped all over again. But once more, the peace didn't last. The relationship between Buck and 50 Cent began falling apart for the final time. 50 claimed Buck owed him more than $300,000, and according to Buck, 50 started blocking every attempt he made to release new music by sending cease and desist notices. It felt like history repeating itself. Another feud, another fallout. Then in 2019, leaked audio surfaced online involving Buck in a private conversation, and the internet went wild. Instead of keeping things private, 50 took it public, mocking Buck on social media and turning the situation into another viral spectacle. The posts were cruel and disrespectful, and they shut the door on any possible future G-Unit reunion once and for all. Buck ended up filing for bankruptcy again, this time mainly to escape his long-standing contract issues and to fight back against 50 Cent's ongoing lawsuit. After a long and stressful legal battle, the case finally wrapped up in 2023, with Buck agreeing to pay $260,690 out of the alleged $250,000 debt. To cover that and his other outstanding bills, he liquidated assets worth roughly $1.05 million, with nearly $445,000 going to legal fees, leaving about $600,000 to settle what was owed to creditors. Then came another tough moment. In April 2025, Buck was arrested again and sentenced to 30 days in jail for repeated bond supervision violations linked to an old domestic case from 2020. He served his time and was released around May 12, 2025. His trial for that case has since been pushed back to January 12, 2026. But this time, Buck seems to be moving differently, more grounded, more focused, and in a much better mental space than before. Now, Buck's energy is all about rebuilding. He's active on social media, connecting with fans, dropping snippets of new music, and celebrating milestones like the 18th anniversary of his classic album, Straight Outta Cashville. Instead of feeding into old drama, he's channeling that energy into his legacy and showing everyone that his story isn't over yet, not by a long shot. No matter how many times life tried to knock him down, Buck's still standing tall, showing resilience like never before. The comeback is real, and his grind speaks louder than ever. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, drop a comment to share your thoughts, and subscribe for more hip-hop deep dives and untold stories. Tap one of the videos on your screen to keep watching. There's plenty more where this came from.